Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And at the end of the program today, all of the participants will be able to identify different types of membership campaigns and the strategies as well as their purposes. They'll be able to understand how to conduct orientation or onboarding and new member and advisor or mentor programs. They'll understand how the chapter marketing and recruitment toolkit should be used and also where you can find that. You'll be able to identify volunteer roles as well as benefits and, of course, understand why, how to recognize new members and volunteers. So when we talk about campaigns, we need to understand the purpose of them. There are many different reasons for creating a campaign, including recruitment or growing our membership, which many of us probably that's most of our primary reason for being on the call today. They can also raise awareness on specific issues, advocate for an issue. They also work well for engaging our members and getting them more involved, which is also something we'll concentrate on today. Additionally, they can be used for specific goals, such as increasing attendance to a meeting, perhaps increasing your social media presence. You want to increase the number of tweets or likes on Facebook. And additionally, campaigns can even be used for fundraising. But today we're going to focus on a couple of specific membership campaigns we can use to recruit members and get the word about ANFP as well as our state chapters. And one of those campaigns is a Member Get a Member campaign, which benefits all that are involved. A Member Get a Member campaign encourages active and current members to reach out to those in their network or around them to become active members as well. So if the active member is successful and the prospective member joins, most associations or chapters, there's typically a benefit for that member that's doing the recruiting. Often associations will include those members in something like a raffle, where they might raffle off a free registration or an all-expenses paid to the annual conference or something of that nature to really motivate those current members to go out there and recruit new members. Some of these things are not always feasible for chapters, especially an all-expenses paid trip. I know that's rather costly. But maybe you want to incentivize your chapter members by giving them discounts on meetings or giving away merchandise, maybe raffling off ANFP membership. And those people included in the raffle will, of course, be those members that were successful in recruiting new members. And typically how it works is the more members you get, the more discounts you receive or perhaps merchandise you receive, depending on however your chapter chooses to incentivize those active members. But the point being here is that you've engaged your current members, you've recruited new members that will now all benefit from the ANFP membership as well as the state chapter. So it's really a win-win for all. Another type of membership campaign can be seen just about every day on social media, specifically on Facebook. When members like, tag their friends or their colleagues, or they share posts, an organization is expanding their audience to those that may not have been able to reach otherwise. So say you're on Facebook and you like something from ANFP, that's going to show up in your news feed, and that may have reached somebody that knew nothing about ANFP and may pique their curiosity. So think of the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge when we're speaking of this type of campaign. Now this isn't specific to member recruitment, but rather cause marketing or fundraising. However, many of you are probably familiar with this viral campaign that may have, and some of you may have even taken part in it, or maybe know somebody that did. The idea was that when someone was challenged, they were challenged to dump a bucket of ice water on their head, and if they went through with it, they would then have to nominate 7 others to do the same. If they chose not to dump the ice water on their head, they were then supposed to donate to the American ALS Association. Therefore, they're prompting fundraising and also promoting their cause. And that's to make more people aware of the understanding of the ALS, or what's known as Lou Gehrig's disease. And I can speak for me personally, I wasn't really familiar with ALS when this challenge was going viral on Facebook a couple years ago. But it piqued my interest. I wanted to learn more about it. So I actually jumped on the ALS website, learned more about it, and I actually did go through the Ice Bucket Challenge. So the point, again, being here is that someone who doesn't know anyone or has not been affected by ALS, this sort of exposure and information may have never reached them without something as simple as a tag or a post, as this challenge presented, like it did on social media. So here we want to maybe think about Pride in Food Service Week, which is coming up in February. Perhaps start planning on your post your chapter will create during that week. Ask members to tell you what makes them proud to work in food service, and ask them to tag another member to do the same thing, and so on and so on. So you're reaching a wider audience even though you may not know them directly. You really never know who you're going to reach when you do this, which is kind of the great thing. And you can even think about incentivizing those members that share their posts or perhaps tag other non-members. So a really great way to get the word out there about your chapter and what you do. And another way to encourage membership is by offering exclusivity to new members on services, merchandise, or even registration. So think about ANFP Nationals, our own member and non-member pricing model on regional meetings or ACE or even some of our merchandise. Members are offered an exclusive price for meeting registration along with other exclusive benefits that are only available to members. So this is also a good way to incentivize those people to join. Consider making this offer as part of your membership campaign, where prospective members that join by a certain date will receive a discount on the next chapter meeting they attend, or perhaps some other kind of service or program that your chapter offers. So again, these are just a few types of campaigns that you can use as part of your recruiting efforts. While these are the types, we just want to be sure also that we really understand the how-tos of recruiting as well, and the basics that really need to be applied with all campaigns. So we're going to take this, what we've learned, and break this down a little bit, as most of us can't simply walk up to a prospective member and ask them to join and then that's that. You know, we need to put a little bit more work and effort and strategy into it. We need to do some planning and understand those strategies before we can actually begin to recruit. And first, we want to know who we are going to target. We certainly need to reach out to those, you know, the typical people that we think of when we think of recruiting, those that are enrolled in programs, those that have recently graduated. But we don't also want to assume that this is the only audience that's interested in the credential or ANFP. We really want to encourage you to think outside the box and consider speaking with those that may or may not be employed in the food service or nutrition fields. Talk to them about coming to CDM. So when you're thinking of these prospective CDMs, consider approaching such people that may work in the food service or healthcare industries, even people like dietary or nurses' aides. Those probably crossed your mind already. Perhaps orderlies. Maybe there's a dishwasher or other kitchen staff that are really hardworking and show a lot of integrity with their work. They may be potential CDMs. They might just not know that information or have that kind of exposure to what the credential is. Think of professional staff such as administrative assistants or patient care coordinators. Cooks and chefs, of course. Food service directors, a lot of times they may be a director, but perhaps they don't hold the credential. Health coaches are another great group of individuals to approach. And even RDs that are still seeking work, as I understand that field is very competitive, but maybe they're not able to currently find work. So encourage them to think about becoming a CDM as well as joining ANFP. Also want to think of sanitarians or health inspectors as well as administrators. Similar to RDs or health coaches, they may be in the field working, but they might not hold the credential. But then again, also look at individuals throughout your facility, perhaps people you know in your life or other colleagues, even former colleagues, that all have that similar work ethic like a CDM, which are hardworking, professional, organized, dedicated, and helpful. And again, they may or may not be in the food service, nutrition, or healthcare fields, but they could turn out to be a great CDM candidate. And of course, we don't want to forget about lapsed or inactive members as well. So we want to take the time to reach out to them directly, find out why are they delaying their renewal or why they dropped completely. This is a great opportunity for chapters to find out ways they can improve the experience or for their, not only for their delayed or lapsed members, but as well as their current members. And so once we've determined or targeted your audience, you want to determine your strategy. When we encourage our chapters to continually recruit throughout the year, you may want to consider a more targeted approach with a membership campaign. So similar to the ones we just discussed, and consider strategies as we discussed a moment ago, like the member get a campaign, social media campaigns, or exclusive benefits. You might want to consider other tactics like telemarketing campaign, direct mail, email, or even a combination of all different kinds of sorts of these things. Just be clear, just be sure to give clear direction to your members on the approach that they should be using to recruit those members. So if you're going to use a member-to-member get a campaign with, let's say, a direct mail tactic, be sure that everybody is clear on that's the approach you're using and they know how to do that. And of course, preparation, which can make or break the success of your membership campaign. Make sure your current members or your membership committee, if you have one, have the right materials, the scripts, and the tools in order to recruit members. Many of our tools, materials, and scripts, other documents, they can be found in the new chapter marketing and recruitment toolkit, which we're going to go into detail in just a little bit later. And this you'll find resides in the ANFP Connect under volunteer resources. And also, depending on your audience, you may need to customize these materials. Additionally, you want to be sure that your timing is right. So say you were going to offer a discount for a meeting registration to new members. Would you want to offer that member discount after the spring meeting? Probably not. So you want to start promoting this initiative far enough in advance that your prospective members have all of the membership information and they have plenty of time to really think it over. Additionally, some of your prospective members, they might need that time to speak with their superiors about funding or possibly time off of work that they need to attend the event. So make sure that your timing is well far enough in advance if that's the kind of thing that you're going to offer as part of a new member benefit. And of course, we always want to remember to make it personal. Take the time to get to know our prospective members individually. What are their career goals? Why are they considering becoming a CDM or joining ANFP? Be sure to tell them specific ways that ANFP membership can benefit them. Are they about to sit for the exam? Mention some of the study materials available on the ANFP marketplace. And you might want to even mention that they have member pricing. So again, we're going back to our exclusive benefits. Perhaps they're looking for a job to gain experience. Tell them about the ANFP job board, available to members only, or offer them to keep a lookout for any job opportunities in the area that you might be able to share with them. You want to post a thank you to your prospective members on Facebook if they attend an event. It's even better if they're following your page and you can tag them. Again, we're spreading the word on social media and exposing ourselves to more people than maybe we had not been able to before. So whatever it is, try to recognize and acknowledge that they have a personal interest in becoming a CDM or an ANFP member. And just, keep reminding them that there's really something in it for everyone. With that being said, we also want to simplify the process for recruiting as well as joining. We don't want to overwhelm them with too many details and stats, so we don't want to just rattle off every single ANFP membership benefit that ever existed, but really, again, narrow our focus and personalize it to what they can get out of that membership. We also don't want to push too aggressively. That can sometimes be a little bit of a turnoff. So if they choose to join, offer to help them with the application or tell them where at least they can find it, where it is on the website. Even better, if you can give them an application, a physical application that they can walk away with, that makes it that much easier for them. You want to make it easy for them to find out more information about the chapter or ANFP, and then again, how they can go about applying for membership, the things that they might need in order to do that. Also, something as simple as having a prospective member, again, be acknowledged by the president, one of your chapter leaders. They can greet them personally. Also, have them all stand at a meeting if they're willing to do that, and give them a round of applause. Acknowledge that they're here and that you appreciate them. And this, again, really ties back to making it personal and making those prospective members feel very special. Another simple idea to keep in mind when you're recruiting is to set a realistic and simple goals for your chapter. So for your own members, you also want to keep this simple. And it'll depend on your chapter. You might want to start with a simple goal, such as getting a foot in the door at the community colleges if you haven't already done that, or perhaps local job fairs, and use this as a regular avenue of recruitment. Maybe you start with setting your goal of recruitment and you want to obtain a certain number of new members per quarter. Make sure that goal is realistic and that your members, your active members, will not feel defeated if they don't reach that goal, but rather encouraged to keep moving and continue with your recruiting efforts. And perhaps most importantly, we want to be sure we follow up with them with a phone call, an email, even a handwritten note. Again, we're personalizing it, making them feel special. We want to tell them how much you enjoyed speaking with them and you hope to see them again soon. Be sure that you have a way to be sure that they have a way to get a hold of you, or at least somebody in your chapter, should they have any follow-up questions or if they want more information. And this is actually a little tip here. Might be nice where your ANFP branded business cards come in handy. So something to think about there if you don't already have those developed or created. And when you follow up, even suggest setting up a time just to meet for coffee sometime in the near future to continue the conversation that you've had, or reach out to them, make sure that they're doing okay. And also, one thing to note here, that as your chapter continually recruits, you want to continually track your prospective members, because it might take a few tries to get a prospective member to join. A lot of times we approach members and it takes them time to think it over. Again, maybe they need that blessing from their superiors, but they most likely won't join the first time. So you want to be sure that you're tracking who came to their meetings, that you have some kind of contact information, and continually reach out to them on a regular basis. Because the more times that we reach out to them and follow up and we stay consistent, the more likely they will tend to join. So again, these are just a few types of campaigns and tactics and ways that we can simplify this process. So I'm just going to pause here, and I'd like to see if there are any questions at this time. Any comments, any best practices anybody would like to share? No? All right, so let's keep going. Okay, so now that we've gotten a few new members, what's next? Next, you're going to need to do onboarding and orientation. And there are several ways to go about this depending on your chapter size and, of course, their resources. But the main point of orientation is to be sure they understand how the chapter operates, any important dates, who to turn to for questions, and where to find ANFP tools and resources in order to maximize their membership. Now, some of you may be aware that National has just recently started a new program with our new members, and we hope to keep them engaged by doing this. So in addition to all the information, documents they receive as a new member, they also receive a new member email once a quarter, starting with a welcome letter and a thank you for joining email. Like just the one you see here up on the screen, I apologize if it's a little bit hard to read. We do have templates available for this on ANFP Connect. So this is something that your chapter might want to start doing. It's a really nice way to let new members know that we're appreciative of them, we make them feel welcome, and we're also giving them a lot of information that's very useful. And at headquarters, we continue to engage new members by following up with letters and phone calls throughout the new member's first year with ANFP. So something that your chapter may also want to consider. It's also another great way to let them know when the next meeting or the events are taking place. You can give them some background information about your chapter, like the number of members, if you have districts, any names of your chapter leaders. You could even mention past accomplishments, like a Diamond Award nominee or recipient. And of course, you want to make sure that they know who to get in touch with if they have any questions as a chapter member. Another thing you might want to wish to include is a date and time of a face-to-face meeting for new members. And now this again is going to vary from chapter to chapter. However, I do recommend a separate time or date be set aside for new members meeting or event. You could consider hosting a new member meet and greet. It could be prior to or following a chapter meeting. You might want to host a lunch or a reception that's just for new members. Send out invites via snail mail rather than the typical email blast, because that does tend to be a little bit impersonal, and sometimes those can get lost in the shuffle. So it should be exciting for new members and at the same time inspire and motivate your veteran members. Be sure you have an icebreaker planned or some suggestions for how to get the conversation started with new members. Not all of us are comfortable stepping outside that comfort zone where we don't want to be the first one to start the conversation. So, let's provide our own members with some very easy ice-breaking questions, open-ended questions such as, what made you decide to become a CDM? Or what are you most looking forward to as an ANFP member? You could also consider hosting an event that really highlights your chapter's presence in the community or state, specifically in ways that you give back. You also might want to consider a small door prize or a token to give away to new members as a way for them to remember the experience also. And last, you want to be sure that you're documenting the event on social media, whether it's Facebook or Twitter. We want to be sure that those that were not able to attend know what they're missing and, of course, encourage them to attend the next event. So again, I want to pause here, and I would like to ask what some of our new member events that our chapters hold. Does anybody do anything for new members? No? Okay. Well, definitely something to think about as your new members come on board, thinking of unique ways to make them feel special and keep them engaged. And in addition to the social aspect, you want to take some time to review the other important information for the areas of your chapter. If you haven't already, start by introducing chapter leaders. I'm going to pause right here. Thank you, Carol. Carol introduces the new members at their meetings. I think that's wonderful. It gives your current members a name with a face, and hopefully they approach them and they start the conversation and are helpful and can provide any information that they might have. So that's wonderful. A great way to acknowledge our new members. Thank you. Okay, so if you haven't already, start by introducing your chapter leaders at your new member event. Give them the opportunity to explain their role and give them some background information about themselves. You'll also want to briefly review the chapter's annual goals as well as the strategic plan. You can always provide a more detailed review and explanation of both of those, and that can take place at another time when it includes all of your members, but just a brief overview will really do. You don't want to overwhelm them with too much information. Be sure to note any of your upcoming or annual chapter events that new members know how to register or who to contact for those events. And this is also a great opportunity for chapter leaders to discuss possible volunteer opportunities, including officer positions or even short-term opportunities. Encourage them to consider volunteering in any capacity. This is another great way to get them engaged and retain them as members. And you could even take this time to have current volunteers share their experience and explain some of the benefits of volunteering as well. And speaking of benefits, don't forget to mention the benefits of being a chapter member. In addition to the everyday typical benefits like expanding your professional network, getting to know people in the area, access to great educational programs and volunteer opportunities, tell them what other opportunities make your chapter unique. How has it opened doors for other members? Really let them know how it's benefited them, you or them personally. Be sure to mention any awards that your chapter has received or significant achievements that make your chapter unique. Additionally, I would just take some time to go over your chapter website. Perhaps if you have some time to go over the ANFP website as well. So those are some things that you might want to include in your new member event. Again, this should be specifically geared toward new members. Of course, you can welcome active members, but I would assume that most of them know much of the stuff that you would cover. So I'm just going to pause here again, and I want to see what else you might include in your new member orientation or your onboarding. Anybody? Does anybody host a social event for your new members? No? Okay. I have a comment here. It says we introduce new members at meetings in a pinning ceremony using the CDM lapel pin. That is wonderful. I love that idea. It makes them feel special and unique. And again, it puts the new faces out to our veteran members. So a great way to recognize and engage them. These are some great ideas. So I'm glad we're hearing from some of you out there. I appreciate that. Anyone else? Questions or comments on that portion here? Okay. All right. So now it's going to be helpful for your new members to get the full experience at their first meeting or event. But then, after they walk out the door, what happens after that? This is when your chapter might want to develop a new member welcome committee or perhaps a mentor or new member advisor program. I'm going to kind of use these terms interchangeably. If you wanted to define yours as a chapter a little bit more, whether it be a welcome committee or an advisor committee or program, you certainly could. But when I reference these, I'm really speaking of a group of veteran members that are there to assist your new members if they have questions or they need information. There's really a group of people that will be doing that. And so with a new member program in place, your chapter can be sure that your new members have someone to turn to for questions and ensure they that they stay engaged. However, you might wish to have a few of these guidelines in place. And you first want to start, of course, by asking your current members to serve as advisors or to the new members. You want to ensure that they're prepared to act as members or advisors. And to do that, they should understand certainly some things about your chapter and the national membership benefits, or at least be able to tell the new members where they can find this information if they can't rattle it all off. And the same goes for resources. You know, mentors should be, they should be familiar with the volunteer handbook, the volunteer resources, which are both great tools for new members. You know, I feel like if you're reading through that handbook, you're really getting an understanding of how chapters most certainly work. Additionally, your mentors or advisors should be prepared to help with questions related to reporting CE and audits. Certainly, we encourage you to call staff. There's tutorials on our website, but if you're interested in advising new members, you know, they're probably going to come to you and want that kind of one-on-one instructional advice as to how to do that. Advisors should be prepared to offer guidance on how to maintain their credential and be able to offer suggestions for sources for reliable and valuable CE courses, articles, webinars, or other educational programming, you know, even outside of your chapter and even outside of ANFP. And depending on your advising program, you may wish to have your mentors be prepared to discuss career paths and opportunities for new members if you're at that level in advising. And depending on your chapter size and the number of new members, you'll want to decide if you want to have 2 or 3 mentors as a committee, as I discussed or mentioned just a moment ago, for all your new members, or do you want to have one-on-one relationships? You'll also need to determine how you'll pair your advisors with your new members if you do have one-on-one relationships. Are you going to match them by age, location, facility type? For those chapter leaders on the call, or those board members, you're going to have to decide how you want to structure your advising or your mentor program and how to best match those new members with advisors if you do choose to do one-on-one advising. Once they're matched, however they're matched, your advisors or your mentors will need to reach out to your new members via email or phone, and this should probably do this before your meeting face-to-face, just as a general, you know, hi, how are you? Thank you for joining. I'm looking forward to seeing you, and so on. And once you've matched them, they've had the opportunity to meet face-to-face, and again, how detailed your advising or your mentoring program goes, you might want to consider having your advisors and your new members discuss goals for their first year of membership. Setting goals for our new members really encourages them to stay engaged and active within the chapter and at least ANFP. Perhaps their goals are to obtain a certain number of CEs within their first year. Maybe they'd even like to shadow a chapter leader in order to learn more about the role. Or maybe their goal is to attend at least 1 ANFP meeting each year. Whatever they are, you want to discuss those goals and discuss how they can achieve them, and as an advisor or a mentor, how you can help or offer the support to achieve those goals so they do stay engaged. And of course, depending on your new members' goals, this will also determine the time commitment for each party. If it's a face-to-face meeting once a month or quarterly, and then maybe with emails and phone calls in between, it'll have to be up to the advisors as well as the new members. And it'll just depend on availability. And again, it might refer back to your goals. Some of those goals may take more time than others. As advisors and mentors, it's crucial that we stay proactive and we work on keeping the members engaged on a regular basis. Ask how that you can help. Ask them if there's something they need. You may want to personally invite them to chapter functions, or if you're attending another CE-related meeting, try to have a regularly scheduled meeting or at least a phone call with them, but also make yourself available if they have questions or concerns as those come up. At the same time, encourage your new members to be accountable as well. It can't just solely fall on your advisors or your mentors. So if they've set goals, ask them to give you, some updates, progress reports throughout the year to make sure that they're staying on track to meet those. But again, also be prepared to offer support, guidance, advice, and encouragement so they are successful. So this is really the groundwork for an advising or a mentoring program. Perhaps your chapter has something like this in place already. For those of you that don't, you might want to wish to further customize your program, and that maybe it better suits your new members depending on how they are, what facilities they work in. However, when the chapter and national both continue to engage our new members throughout their first year, the more likely they are to continue with their membership and maintain their credential. Again, I'm going to pause here and see if we have any questions. Does anyone on the call currently have something like this in place for your new members? No? Okay, well again, as I mentioned, we started a new program here at National, so we hope this trickles down at the local level also. But if you choose to have an advisory program or mentoring program for your new members, I think that's wonderful. It's easier for them to stay probably engaged at the local level than it is at the national level. Okay, so now we're going to go into a bit of detail the new chapter marketing and recruitment toolkit. For those of you that did not receive the email or see the notification on the chapter leaders forum, the toolkit is to assist our chapter members with recruitment and marketing efforts at the local level. We understand the challenges of recruiting and retaining new members. So within this toolkit, we've provided several marketing and recruitment documents and tools that are specific to this initiative. And you may have seen there are 3 categories, each designed with a specific purpose: communications and tools, CDM promotion materials, and additional resources. Communications and tools are meant to be used by active members in order to communicate with the prospective members in various settings or methods. So if you're at a community college, perhaps you're at a networking event, and these materials really should not be shared with our prospective members. They're really meant for our own internal purposes. They include such tools as templates like the letterhead. We have business card templates. We have prospective member or student email templates. If we're going to follow up, we need to say thank you. Again, include all this information that may be useful to them. And then, of course, if you were going to, let's say, a healthcare show, if you were going to a career day, the ANFP pull-up banner request form is also there. And we also give you some tips on recruiting new members as well within the communication and tools sections. The CDM promotion materials can be used as promotional materials, obviously, and can be shared with your prospective members for recruitment and informational purposes. And this section includes materials such as how to spot a potential CDM. So as we talked about earlier, we really want to encourage you to think outside the box. Maybe somebody that you hadn't considered as a potential CDM, maybe they are. If they're hardworking, they're dedicated, they're resourceful, that to me makes a great CDM. Additionally, we have job descriptions. We have links to the videos for discovering the power of the credential. We have a list of CDM benefits, the scope of practice, and of course a link of what CDM means to me. So these are all great resources that you might have rolling on a laptop if you had a booth set up somewhere, or again, if you were recruiting at a community college. Depending on what you were doing, there's some great materials here. And then of course our additional resources. And these you might find these useful for recruiting efforts as well. We include an ANFP update PowerPoint. This is specifically for chapter leaders. If you wanted to give an update on some national news at your meeting, that is out there for them. It has talking points included. We have our applications for the pre-professional and the professional. We have a prospective member brochure. We have a list of chapter benefits and scholarship and grant information as well. So just take a look on there if you haven't. Again, it's in ANFP Connect, located under their volunteer resources. And if you find something that you need for your chapter for the marketing or recruitment, and it's not included in the toolkit, definitely reach out to me because chances are if you need it, another chapter is probably looking for the same thing. So that was just kind of a brief little overview of the chapter marketing and recruitment toolkit. Are there any questions about that at this time? Anything, any comments? Anybody see anything missing if you've had the chance to look at it that we can add there? Okay, well we really hope that you as chapter leaders find that useful, and those documents are really geared toward our recruiting efforts. So again, anything you don't see that you think you might need, please feel free to contact me. Okay, and now we're just going to shift gears a bit. We're going to talk about some volunteer recruitment. Once you've got your new members on board and you go through orientation, you might want to consider putting the volunteer bug in their ear. And truthfully, this doesn't apply to new members, but really all of our chapter members, specifically those that have not stepped up to volunteer in the past. It's never too late or too early to have this discussion with your members. You first want to determine the volunteer opportunities that are available, either as an immediate need or perhaps in the future. Also, are they long-term or short-term roles? Long-term roles consist of your officer and leadership roles, obviously, such as president, secretary, newsletter editor, and so on. These roles will require training, and they'll involve a time commitment, typically of at least 1 year, just depends on your chapter and your bylaws. Ideally, your chapter will be developing a succession plan each year, so there should never be an urgency to find a volunteer, unless, of course, there's unforeseen circumstances. And your short-term roles, these are going to consist of planning a fall or spring meeting or helping organize a one-time social event. To help new volunteers or members get their feet wet, you can start with something as simple as having them staff the registration table at the next meeting or maybe pass out agendas. These roles are often one-off opportunities to help build their confidence and give them a chance to meet new members and get more exposure to volunteering. So you want to be sure that you differentiate between those roles when you start talking about volunteer opportunities. And depending on the role, again, I had mentioned some of the training may be required. So as you all know, when a member steps up to volunteer for an officer's role, they'll need to be trained in order to successfully fill that position. And there's several ways they can be trained. Now, ideally, with a succession plan in place, they're trained by the person currently holding the role, so when they start their term, they're ready to hit the ground running. Additionally, you may want to encourage them to take one of our chapter leadership courses, which gives them an overview of the roles and responsibilities and best practices. But we really recommend both methods of training if at all feasible. Now, your short-term roles, the one-time volunteer opportunities, some of these are going to require training, but very, very minimal. It just depends on what they're doing. So, for example, if a member volunteers to help at the registration desk at the meeting, they might need 10 minutes worth of instructions just so they know how to check guests in, and then that's it. I will say, though, that volunteers are really more likely to continue volunteering if they start with small, one-time projects, and then they slowly, gradually work their way up into larger roles that take more time. It also really gives them a great chance to be exposed to different experiences, help them hone in on what they like to do, and what other kind of volunteer opportunities they would like to take advantage of. So as we said, start small. You might find that it's not quite the right fit. They may prefer to be more of the behind-the-scenes role. So if you have them help with coordinating the education program or designing a flyer for the meeting, they're going to be more behind the scenes. Maybe they're not quite comfortable, greeting and making chit-chat with some of your members at this time. So whatever they choose to do, designate someone in your chapter to follow up and check in with your new volunteers to ensure that they've had a positive experience. If they did not, find out why and work on improving the role or the experience in the future. And you want to encourage them to try something new if they weren't happy with their role. But definitely find out why they weren't interested in returning to that role, or if they didn't have a good experience with a one-time opportunity, ask them to try something new. And last and certainly not least, we want to encourage, we want to acknowledge our volunteers. As volunteers come and go and they change in and out of roles, we want to be sure they're recognized for their contributions and their hard work. And acknowledge the time that they've spent supporting the chapter and the contributions while they made during that role and worked on that project. And again, hopefully this will lead to repetition of them continuing to volunteer through different areas throughout the chapter. You might also want to include this information of your volunteers, acknowledging them in your newsletter, post it on Facebook, on Twitter, even write a handwritten thank you note. Perhaps you give volunteers a small token of appreciation or host a special event like a reception in their honor, similar to like what we do at ACE. We have our volunteer luncheon. I think this is a great way that we acknowledge our volunteers, and we're letting them know, hey, thank you, we appreciate everything that you guys do throughout the year, and they probably don't hear it enough, to be honest. You could be so bold to offer a Chapter Volunteer of the Year award, not only to recognize those that put in a lot of effort, but it's a great way, another great way to promote volunteerism with your chapter as well. And when we recognize our volunteers and we show our appreciation, they're more likely to continue to volunteer and continue to be engaged with the chapter as well as ANFP. Additionally, they're setting an example for others that will hopefully inspire your other members to do the same. So I'm just going to pause here now, and what are some of the ways that you guys recognize your own volunteers within your chapter? Anybody? No? I know sometimes volunteering, you know, it's not the easiest, taking our personal time. I do that on a personal level, and, you know, getting even a thank you. We get a thank you from our PTO in our newsletter, our school newsletter every week. And if you volunteer with something with a PTO that week, they say thank you. So it's nice to get that, even just a thank you. Great. Somebody said they list their volunteers in the newsletter. That's wonderful. Who doesn't like to see their name in print, you know? Even just that small thing, it always feels nice to hear. Okay. So are there any questions, comments right now related to anything that we discussed today? Just keep in mind, you know, that's fine, nobody wants to step up, but maybe there are no questions. Please just keep in mind, you can always post your questions or your comments, your best practices, anything related to chapter management, not just necessarily recruitment and retention. These can all be posted on the Chapter Volunteers Leader Forum. You know, your peers are an amazing resource, so we hope that you utilize that. And again, that's on ANFP Connect under My Communities. And certainly, if you have questions that you want to reach out to me directly, you know, this is what I'm here for, so I'm happy to answer those questions personally as well. Okay. Well, last, I just want to remind everyone of a few important dates coming up. As a reminder, the ANFP National Office will be closed December 23rd through January 2nd. Don't forget your regional meetings in Minneapolis, Minnesota, March 9th through the 10th, and in Princeton, New Jersey, April 6th to 7th. The registration is now open, available on the ANFP website. And of course, don't forget to save the date for ACE. That's in Las Vegas, Nevada, June 6th to 9th, 2017. And there will be no chapter chat for December. We all know how crazy the holidays are, so we will be postponing until January. So thank you all again, and we hope you have a wonderful holiday season.